Hello guys, happy Valentine's Day, although I don't know if I'm uploading it on Valentine's Day, I'm recording it then. So this is a video of me going over some really obsessive stuff, and I sort of have a guest with me. Hi.
Hi.
Because it's Valentine's Day. So me looking at you made me feel like I'm waiting for that or something. I wasn't. Anyway, she's here and she may or may not pop in and out of the video a little bit. Just a warning. Okay. I feel so silly doing this in front of you because like I couldn't imagine that you care at all about the string density between this and that racket.
I'd love to know more.
Okay. Well, there you have it. Let's get into it then. Basically, a little while ago, I ordered a bunch of rackets on Tennis Warehouse, and I'm kind of chasing this dragon of looking for a string pattern that's actually more dense than the EZONE 98. It's funny, and I keep saying this in my videos, but it's funny because the EZONE 98 is a 16 by 19, but the way in which it's actually drilled, the string pattern manages to be closer than a lot of 18 by 20s, which still just blows my mind. So I'm kind of chasing this dragon, as I said, of looking for a racket that is more dense than the EZONE 98. And it's crazy that looking at 18 by 20s, I'm still not really able to find that most of the time. I found it once or twice, but then, there's always something else about the racket that's too crazy or terrible. So anyway, I wanted to make this video to go over some rackets and the observations I've made of these rackets in case you guys end up being interested in some of them or just interested in the observations I've made. And so I ordered a few Prince rackets, and these are my observations. So basically I was able to rule out right away I'm not interested in these rackets, and as soon as I put them up side by side I was able to tell why. So if you want to see, one reason is that the string density isn't really all that different. I guess down here it starts to deviate a little bit more, like the crosses are a little more open as you work your way down, but that's fine. I'm really concerned about the sweet spot because I don't want to break strings too easily. More than that, the thing that really turned me off is that the drill pattern is done in such a way, or I don't know, it's more like a drill technique. You see the crosses here, the grommets come through at whatever angle the racket frame is coming in. Where I think they started doing something a while ago on a lot of rackets where they started doing something called like straight drill. And you can see that on the Yonex here on the right, the frame is curved, but the grommets are drilled straight. So the strings are coming straight through despite the curve of the racket. And I just saw that the Prince isn't doing that, and it kind of turned me off of the Prince. And the reason that's annoying is because you have a string coming through here, and especially up here, it gets ridiculous. You have a string coming through here, and then it just has to take this sharp corner to straighten out for the cross. And it puts like this weird stress angle all across this frame. Is there any, I don't know, you're an engineer, is there terminology for that?
It does look like there's going to be stress on the string because that strange angle that it's coming at.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'm thinking too is that it's going to almost like want to bend the frame in a certain way because it's coming in at this angle. Like it almost wants to just apply like a turning force or like a twisting force on that beam of the racket. And I think that they're able to reduce that by making the drill or the string on the Yonex is coming through with the blue strings, right? Mm-hmm. That's actually coming in through the racket at the actual angle that the string is going to be at. Like as soon as the string comes through, there doesn't have to be any correction applied to the string. It's just that's how it's coming through because that's how it's drilled. But when you drill it with this curve and then the string has to straighten out and there's all this tension applied, I mean, you're pulling these strings each at like 50 pounds, and you got to imagine 50 pounds strung 20 times on this left racket because it's an 18 by 20. It's just applying that twisting force right there on that corner more than it would on the Yonex.
Those little black protrusions coming out, where the strings come out, I've seen those broken after stringing jobs because of that.
You think so?
I've seen that before. I'm like, what is this black stuff on my hand or something on the ground, and I look over at my racket, I'm like, oh, that's that.
Sometimes that's because, and I'm sure that what you're saying is true, like there is probably more stress on these grommets, as they're called, because they're not drilled straight. So literally just by installing the string, you're putting a lot of stress on the grommet, whereas if it was drilled straight, it wouldn't be. There would be no stress applied. But sometimes the grommets break because you tie these knots here, and you've just, every time you string a racket, you got to tie that knot, and it keeps, slowly breaking this grommet.
Yeah, those two look deformed. That's probably
Yeah, that is just one of the necessary evils of stringing a racket. But the better you get at it, the less damage it does, and you can build them in a way that reduces the damage that it may or may not cause. But anyway, yeah, long story short, I think that it's just kind of behind the times to be drilling a racket in such a way that doesn't have a straight drill through. I don't really even know what they call it, but they started doing it on a lot of rackets at some point, and they had like a name for it, and I'm sure it's one of those things that all the racket companies just started doing, and it became an industry standard. So anytime I see a racket that isn't doing that, it just kind of turns me off from the racket. So that's ultimately why I ruled out this Prince Phantom 100X. But I was turned on by it because I figured it might be actually a pretty spin-friendly racket, despite the fact that it's, got a dense string pattern or whatever. I just wanted to check it out, and that's really why I ruled it out. Here's just another picture of it. And I don't know if it reveals anything more than I've already talked about. And I think I have a picture of the mains lined up. Yeah, I have the mains lined up here. Oh yeah, I think that was one of the things too, is that some of the crosses outside of the sweet spot seemed more dense, but the mains are actually a little more open on the prints. You can see that here, that it starts to be a little further down, a little further down, a little further down. But I guess if you look at the point at where it actually comes out, because it's not straight drilled, maybe it's about the same. The exit point of the string, if you want to call it that. So anyway, just, that's why I didn't go with that, and that's why I sent it back to Tennis Warehouse. Here is a CX200 Pro. It's a Dunlop 18 by 20. There's a bunch of reasons I ended up not liking the racket, but they do the straight drill thing. You can look at these crosses. They're straight. So that's a good sign. And there's things to like about this racket, but and the sweet spot is a little bit more dense. I think I lined up the crosses right about here, right? They're pretty lined up, and then here you can see the EZONE actually is still more open. It's more open as you move down. So definitely more dense in the sweet spot on the Dunlop, which is the whole reason I got it. This one is a 95-inch 18 by 20. Excuse my phone. And I just ended up not liking this racket because I just can't hit as good of a ball as I can with the EZONE. I don't know. There's probably a lot of reasons why. It's a completely different kind of racket. It's more control oriented. It's a much smaller head size. It's very flexy. And maybe there's other reasons that I just don't like the racket. I didn't really care for how it felt, actually. It felt kind of comfortable, but sort of like a dead metal beam, I guess. It just didn't really feel like the kind of tennis racket that I want to play with. So that's why I sent it back, but it did fit the criteria of having a denser sweet spot. And it was light enough that it might be spin friendly as well. So yeah, it was worth trying. But it went back. You want to see the mains compared. The mains are lined up here. Sometimes I don't line up the center of the mains. Instead, I take like the left or the right center main and I line those up. So I lined up the top ones. And if you do that, I guess the EZONE is very, very similar in the density. So I also felt like maybe it's not even that much more dense. The thing too is that I'm using these restring. Restring 0 is the string of choice for me now, and it's such a durable string that I've actually dialed back a little bit how much I care about the string pattern, because in this 16 by 19 restring still lasts twice as long as something like RPM Blaster, Solinco Hyper G, etc. And I've talked a lot about this string, and I've talked this string in a very positive light. And you can buy this string with a discount. Actually, Time for Tennis will give you a 10% discount if you type that in, but I'll leave a link in the video as well so you can get that. And yeah, I'm happy. I think I'm happy is what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to find happiness like all of us. And I think I did with Restring 0. You should try this string if you want insane spin and great durability. The string just pays for itself. And it's not even that crazy. It's like $15 for a set, and you get 10% off. So yeah, go ahead and do that if you want to try what I think is probably one of the best strings of all time. All right, I've said enough.
Okay.
About that string. I got more to say. This is another Prince racket. What is it called? The Prince ATS Textreme Tour 100P. Super memorable. Too many words, too many letters. And that's actually not unusual for racket names, but it's a Prince racket, and yeah, same thing. This is actually one of their newer rackets. So even their newer rackets are not updated to have a straight drill pattern. So again, just the same kind of disappointment. But I guess the string pattern seemed a little tighter, although in the sweet spot, not really. Maybe just a little bit, but not really. So those are the reasons I sent it back. And I guess the mains, oh wow, the mains are actually a lot more open on the prints. See that? Like right away, as soon as you get over to the next cross, it's already more open. And then it's even more open as you move out. My goodness, look at that. Yeah, well, that's why I sent that one back. Oh, and then I got some videos here. We can talk about the videos real quick. All right, I pulled up some videos here real quick that we can look at. And I have, maybe I can just do full screen actually. Yeah, let's do that. This is the EZONE 98 compared to the Head Prestige Pro. Head's lineup got really confusing. I think the Pro is like the less dense, and the Tour is actually more dense on the Prestige at least. Super confusing. Anyway, we'll find out. I guess I'll mute the audio because I'm talking. Oh, you know, this Head seems to kind of do the same thing. It doesn't have that straight drill pattern. Are you seeing that now? I've talked about it so much. I like your tone. You sound disappointed. You're like, yeah.
I never liked that sort of design even back then
Huh.
when I was playing. I never liked it. And it just gave me a weird feeling. I'm like, that doesn't look very stable. Feels like something's going to break. And I have seen it broken during string jobs.
It's a point of stress. I'm sure it makes a difference over time. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm comparing the density of the crosses on the Head and the Yonex here. Yeah, and I can see that the the EZONE maintains its density a little more. Yeah, I think this is the 18 by 20. Might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure, and it just opens up more as soon as you get sort of to the center of the sweet spot and move down. So I was like, no reason to try the Head Prestige Pro. Wait, which one is this? Maybe it'll show in the video. Oh, yeah. There it is. It was the Pro. Oh yeah, I took this footage to show how much further down the throat of the racket actually goes. What is the Prestige Pro? It's the Prestige Pro is a 98. So they're both a 98. I'm comparing a 98 to a 98, and it is what is the string pattern? It's an 18 by 20. Okay. So this one is the more dense one. I think the Tour is actually heavier. That's what it is. The Tour has a less dense string pattern, but it's heavier. Okay, so confusing. Anyway, look at that. It's a lot longer than the EZONE 98. So the mains, you got to imagine the mains are, that much longer. You can see. Oh my gosh, yeah. It's a big difference. Comparing the mains density again, and yeah, wow, look at that. You can even see the grommets kind of bending to the stress of the drill pattern. You see that?
Yeah.
Look at that. The grommet is like twisting as it comes out, and the string is at the very edge of the grommet here. Look at that one, that poor grommet.
Yeah.
Look at that poor grommet.
That's what I'm talking about, though.
You look at these Yonex grommets. They're just chilling. They don't even know a string is coming through, and these ones are like, oh my god, what's happening to me?
Yeah. That's why they break.
That's not good for the grommets. And I think it's maybe not good for the racket. Because you got to imagine right here, you have a string like trying to straighten out, but it can't. I can't believe that they haven't done anything about that. Yes, I'm probably just talking about that in the video, but that is the visual observation to point out there. And I guess the string density, it's really similar. Yeah, very, very similar. Next video. Oh yeah, this video. I literally got a picture of this video just to show that the Prestige Pro, I think the new Prestige lineup in general, but this one's the Pro. It kind of reveals the carbon or graphite layers underneath the racket. Like it's just part of the paint job to have this part kind of raw. I'm sure they put some kind of clear coat over it, like a matte clear coat, but they just reveal the material underneath, and I think that's cool. I'll save the most ridiculous one for last. Okay, so what is this? This is a Prestige. This is another Head Prestige. Oh yeah, this is the MP. Crosses, comparing them. Starts to deviate there. It's actually pretty similar, but yeah, the EZONE's a little more dense here, you can tell. So yeah, and then by the time you get down there, it's a big difference. And comparing the mains, that is the MP, you can see that right there. Yeah, same thing. Stressed out grommets. I mean, you can tell as you move towards the edge of the frame, the grommets look more stressed. And the string pattern is a little bit more open in its drill density, just a little bit. The thing is, like, the grommet looks like it's spaced apart more, but the exit point kind of looks like the same. So, I don't know. But it's already so close, you can kind of go either way with it. So that's the Prestige MP. This is the... Is this the VCORE? Okay, so this is just the standard VCORE Pro 97. But I wanted to point this one out because the VCORE Pro is supposed to be like the control lineup of rackets, but it's interesting because the EZONE actually has a more dense sweet spot in the string pattern than the VCORE Pro 97. And keep in mind the VCORE Pro 97 is a 97 and the EZONE 98 is a 98, so it's like it has a smaller head size and is supposedly the more control-oriented racket, but the string pattern is actually more open on the VCORE Pro. I just thought that's interesting. Yeah, you can see that right here. You see that? Mm-hmm. The crosses are lined up, and then right here it goes down a little further. Yeah. I think I did the same video. Maybe I don't have it here. I have one of the VCORE Pro 1820. Do they call that the D for dense? They used to call it HD for high density, and now they just go by dense, which is probably better. Comparing the mains, they look extremely, extremely similar. I'm not even going to say there's much of a difference. I mean, there is. I think the VCORE Pro is slightly more open, but it's I don't think it's a meaningful difference. But you can see it. Yeah. I did one of the VCORE Pro dense and the 18x20, and I think the sweet spot was just barely more dense, just barely. Like, it was so hard to tell. I don't have footage of it, but maybe you'll take my word for it. I just ultimately decided that racket, I'm actually going to do a review on it, but I had my reasons for not switching. But I thought about it a little bit. Took a little more time to write that racket off than others. All right, Head Prestige Pro, another 18x20, the Djokovic racket. Yeah, you can see here. Oh, that's interesting. So this head racket doesn't have the grommets under as much stress as some others. These look more straight here, don't they? Yeah. Except that one, but that's way up there. So it's interesting because even these ones are way up there. So maybe the drill has to be kind of crazy to go through that much racket to straighten out. But the Yonex still does. Like, the Yonex is still doing that straight drill all the way up here, but at least the head is down here too, so I mean, that's something. So comparing an 18x20, seeing how the crosses line up, I got it kind of lined up here, and you can see that the head is already more open before you even really get to the sweet spot, and it just continues to be more open as you move down the racket. So again, the only reason I've even considered other rackets, because I really like the EZONE so much, is if they have a denser string pattern, I might consider it. But even this 18x20 Head Speed Pro does not. Yep, right here you can see it opens up a little more, but then it's a little tighter here. It's kind of the same, very similar density. But you are comparing an 18x20 to a 16x19, so it is still crazy that they are basically the same in their drill density. All right, I have one more for you. The EZONE 98 compared to the Gamma Bubba Razor. Is that what this ridiculous racket's called? I'm gonna look this up real quick. Looks like a giant racquetball racket. Gamma has one crazy racket, and then they have an even crazier racket. I forget which one this one is. Yeah, which one is this? I think it's the Razor Bubba 137. So this is a 137 head size racket. What else is there to say about it? Its swing weight is 412, which is absolutely insane. Stiffness is 64. That's pretty good. I mean, the composition is 100% graphite. Jeez. Guess they didn't bother putting anything else in there. They're like, this racket's a joke, so let's just put graphite in there and call it a day. I don't know. Maybe that's fine. It's light, kind of. Power level high, according to Tennis Warehouse. Oh, what? Its string pattern is 18x21. Okay. I mean, that seems reasonable for how insane the racket is. But I actually bothered to compare the string pattern a little bit. And I remember being surprised, like, oh, it's actually surprisingly dense for how insane the racket is. Yeah, I'll just pause it there real quick. You can see it's actually surprisingly close. Yeah, it doesn't really start to open up more until here, but even then it's like barely. But then once you get down here, it's like, wow, it just skips an entire cross compared to the EZONE. Look at that. Wow, huge, huge crosses. Okay. And then I just wanted to do a front and back. See the head size difference in shape and length. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. Courtside tennis dampener. Yep, that's it. Yeah. So that was me comparing string pattern density and grommet angles. And those observations ultimately being the reason that I sent all those rackets back, or didn't really bother testing them too much further. So that's that. Hopefully that's helpful to some people. It's kind of just me going over a bunch of silly obsessive details, but those details are really important to me, and it's something that I look for when I am looking for something to consider over the EZONE 98. But so far, the EZONE 98 is probably my racket of choice. So yeah, I've tried just about everything out there that even has a shot at being more dense than the EZONE 98. And even then, maybe I won't like it as much. So we'll see. All right.
Why does density matter?
Density is a funny thing. So the reason I talk about it in my videos is because most string patterns are like 16 by 19, and 16 by 19 means like 16 vertical ones, like the longer ones, and then 19 horizontal ones. Sometimes you get a racket that's an 18 by 20. So technically the 18 by 20 is more dense because it has more strings on the racket. Like there's more mains and there's more crosses, so it's more dense with strings. But people don't necessarily consider how close together all those strings are made to be, right? So if you take two 16 by 19s, one might play really differently because the strings are a lot closer together than another one. It's kind of a shallow spec to rely on if you're only thinking about how many strings are in the racket. You really have to look at the racket and determine how close are the strings and how is that going to affect how the racket plays. So it's just interesting because the Yonex EZONE 98 puts the strings closer together than I've really ever seen done on a racket. And it's so dense that it actually ends up looking more dense than a racket that actually is more dense. That's why I think that observation is interesting, and that's why I've obsessed over it. And it causes some interesting characteristics for the EZONE, because having the strings so close together, I think it makes the strings a little bit more predictable in some ways because they're not so spread out. Really what is important to me is that the strings being closer together, each string is able to distribute the stress of the ball across the string bed a little more, right? Because for the surface area that the ball is actually contacting the string bed, there are more strings, which means I'm less likely to break the strings over time because each string is kind of distributing the stress load over a denser string bed. Because if I'm hitting with a regular racket that's just an average 16 by 19, I will break the strings in like 5 hits, which is annoying to have to string your rackets every 5 times.
Yeah,
or every 5 hits.
I don't know what would be worse. The fact that when the grommets are designed that way, where it's like curved like that, I don't know if stringing would be worse for it or it's the actual hitting that's
I'm guessing
worse for
both
it.
are worse for it. I think just having the strings under tension over time when a string has to come through and just kind of force its way through the racket like that, I think it's not good. I mean, I'm sure the racket's like mostly fine, but if you wanted to make a debate about the stress on the racket, it's probably applying more stress. And then on top of that, yeah, every time you string, every time that you hit, I'm sure that stress adds up. And you can tell because the grommets are more likely to break down over time on rackets that don't have that straight drill. So there's also that.
Is there a stat on that? Or?
A stat on that? No, probably not.
It's going to be kind of hard to track that.
I think so, yeah. There's too many variables.
I do wonder why they designed it that way, though.
I don't know. I mean, it
Why
makes
would you
sense
do
that
that?
you would drill the racket and follow the curve, but I think it's actually more innovative and smart to actually follow, what would you call it? Like the path that the string actually is designed to be on, you know? Because you can look here, the strings are supposed to be straight, right? They're supposed to be straight. So why would you try to straighten out something that's coming in crooked?
Yeah.
So I think this actually makes more sense. And I think that's why a lot of rackets do this. I think Babolat does this now. I'm kind of surprised that Prince doesn't, but that company has gone bankrupt a couple times. And I think the only distributor for Prince rackets is Tennis Warehouse now, and I'm not even really sure that they manufacture rackets very seriously. It's hard to say. People like their rackets, though. They have a following, and they used to be a huge name brand.
They did, yeah.
But I think there's been a lot of innovations in the racket industry, and I just think Prince hasn't really updated to the newest innovations. And I can see why that straight drill thing would be overlooked. both by people but also by the companies. So you know, the point of these videos is to basically make you guys, the consumers, more aware of details that are completely overlooked but ultimately do matter. And I really care about this 16 by 19 versus 18 by 20 argument because a lot of people make oversimplified assumptions about both string beds. They say that the 18 by 20 is less spin friendly, and the reason that they say that is because an 18 by 20 is more dense, therefore the strings are going to move less because there's more friction on the string bed. And you know, people associate achieving topspin by the string essentially like moving out of the way and then snapping back and accelerating the topspin of the ball, which is, you know, that's probably a correct assumption, but a 16 by 19 that is drilled more densely than an 18 by 20, which one on paper is going to be the more spin friendly racket, right? So that's why I think it matters. Anyway, yeah, we really got into it. So anyway, I really wanted to get into it for one of these videos and make my point, make my case, just go through a bunch of rackets and reveal them under the lens of string density and drill techniques at the factory level, I suppose. So yeah, that's that. If you enjoyed that, let me know, and be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for allowing me to hit 1K subs. We are a little bit past that now, which is very cool. And yeah, I have more stuff coming up. People have been requesting that I do like drill density comparisons. I've mostly been doing them in shorts. I don't need to make a whole video about it every single time for every single racket. But this time I just wanted to go through like a pile of them and compare them. So yeah, that was fun. And thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. I have a Pure 98 review coming up soon, so stay tuned for that, and I will see you there or in another video. All right, take care. Bye. Oh, and don't forget to check out Restring. All right, see ya.